you for that introduction, and I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet, the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. Some time ago, the New South Wales government established a policy whereby employees, including ministers, whenever they give, it is a requirement, that whenever they give a presentation or a speech, that acknowledgement to the traditional custodians is provided. Our General Manager of State Training Services, the State Training Authority, has requested that his staff, when we give that acknowledgement to the land and the custodians, that we do so in a meaningful and respectful manner. Last year I attended a conference much like this at Darling Harbour, and the room that we went into had floor to ceiling windows, and we were overlooking the bay at Darling Harbour. The welcome to country was given by a Cadigal woman, elder, and she related to us as we were overlooking the bay how centuries ago whales used to come into the bay to give birth to their young. And intrinsically, the Aboriginal women of that area heard the call, and they too came down to the shoreline and gave birth to their babies there as well. Without this strategic policy, without the requirement to deliver a meaningful welcome to country or acknowledgement to the custodians of the land, the general populace would be unaware of the significant and historic stories. And surely they are the quality outcomes of a strategic policy. I'm sure you as leaders in your fields, different fields here in the energy industries, are well familiar and work towards policy, strategic policy and planning, and the requirement for you to, in terms of managing quality and the embedding of a culture of evaluation and continuous improvement is quite strong. So how does the State Training Authority fit into this, and what are our requirements for you in the energy industries? So at the State Training Authority, it's around policy and planning. And there's two areas that we're particularly involved with, and that is there's an R there for apprenticeship and trainee systems. Norm, would you know what the R might stand for? Okay. So we regulate the apprenticeship and traineeship systems. And we allocate and manage, there's an F there, funding, yay, that person. That's right. Sorry, that came. Thanks. Okay, so there's sort of the policy development and those planning directions, the regulating and the funding. So what functions do we actually work around, and particularly what is the funding for the training market? And in this case, we're going to just have a look at the regulation around the apprenticeship and traineeship system. The first function that we have is we manage the implementation of the national agreed training reforms. And I take on board Martin's a slide that he presented, which was around, I think it was inconsistencies across the jurisdictions. Well, we're here today, and I'm sure many of you have already heard perhaps around harmonisation of the apprenticeship and traineeship system and the reforms that are being undertaken. So maybe if Martin's back here next year with your conference, or that there might be he might be able to say that there's now some consistency across the jurisdictions. We have with us Andrew Mavrikakis. Andrew's at the second table up here, hand up. And Andrew's the New South Wales State Training Authority representative, sitting at the table around those harmonisation reforms for New South Wales, and he's very much an expert in that field and has a lot of industry and training, vet training background, and to be able to deliver what the harmonisation reforms principles are about. There's 6 principles, and just a couple of those principles are around really bringing together a national consistency with apprenticeships and traineeships. It's to reduce, and we hear a lot about reducing the burden and red tape, but it is around reducing the complexity of the system and ensuring that compliance requirements are going to be streamlined. It is also to support the apprentice and the system around opening mobility throughout the jurisdictions. And it's also that the states have agreed and have embraced around the national consistency of the training plan. The training plan is a really important document. It's an interactive document. I also noted in Martin's presentation, he indicated that they were looking at engaging more, and I think the words were pathways with their apprentices. The training plan is one way to do that. We've provided copies for you on your table. This is the way that we are able to work across the student or the apprentice, the RTO, the employer around meaningful engagement and consultation around the apprenticeship. It's something that we're trying to, and particularly Andrew is out there discussing with all of our interested parties, all of the stakeholders, to really engage with the plan. And it's where we can look at how the assessment is going to occur, really a strong document. And as I said, there's agreed engagement with all jurisdictions that this is a nationally approved and endorsed document. Other parts, apart from the national reforms, and we are hearing and have been hearing for some time, reform of the vet sector, reform of training packages, reform, harmonisation, reform of the apprenticeship and traineeship system, and the it's just an interesting environment at the moment. We've just heard about the Minister McFarlane's feeling on how the vet system is going to proceed in the future. You've all ready in this forum indicate what some of those challenges and issues and concerns are. And I'm sure as we go through the discussion paper as it comes out, we'll be able to provide our comments around that. Our second part there is around approving and monitoring the training contract. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but for those of you not familiar, we also establish trade vocations through our legal instrument, which is through our Apprenticeship and Traineeship Act, our vocational training orders. I know that we're the only state that has these, but they provide the qualifications and provide what the apprentices and trainees need to achieve in terms of the training, probationary periods and so on. We have a trade recognition service as well to support those applicants from overseas and interstate with their qualifications and work experience, and having that assessed by an expert panel towards being issued with a tradesperson certificate. Smart and Skilled, which is our training market funded and new funded model, and the way how New South Wales is approaching the entitlement model, which is across all jurisdictions. And so we've undertaken a staged implementation approach to Smart and Skilled. Is due to be implemented in 2015. It identifies the funding that will be paid to the training providers. It has been considered, the New South Wales skills list is out there, and the funding for that, I've got the next slide will provide for you a snapshot of what will be funded for your industries. To be eligible for subsidised training, the organisations must be based in New South Wales. We have some quality measures, we have strength and quality measures and some consumer protection around the funding model. So this is just a snapshot of some of your qualifications and training packages funded through the Smart and Skilled list. The list itself, there was extensive consultation and research undertaken to identify at this point what qualifications. As I said, it's just a snapshot. We have quarantined all apprenticeships, and the traineeships are not quarantined, but many traineeships are on the list, and we have some targeted priority qualifications. We do have on our website is a list of the fees and subsidies, and I must thank Norm, because he's a big advocate for your energy industries and ensuring that those qualifications that are really important for the sector, for the industry, that they're there, and I know that Norm does a great job in advocating for that. Okay. So what we have provided within our Smart and Skilled funding model is quite a strengthened quality, which it's based on 9 principles, and they're up there. The next part that we're going to have a look at will just give some more substance around some of these, but I note in terms of the validation of assessment, we were talking about and discussing assessment with the ASQA Commissioner, and we have ensured that assessment is in there, that there will be some independent consideration around assessment, and that industry will be involved, your sectors will be involved in ensuring that there's validation around the assessment models and practices of some of the RTOs. In terms of the teaching and leadership, there'll be some consideration that there needs to be a network of industry representatives involved in this aspect of our quality principle, teaching and leadership. And we've done quite a lot of work around consumer protection. Okay, so what are the requirements? Once again, it's just a snapshot for you of what our requirements are from your sector, from your industry. So that employ and trainee and apprentices agreed in the training plan and to meet all the legal requirements around that. To provide appropriate facilities and experienced people to facilitate and supervise apprentices and trainees. So we ensure that the apprentice trainee receives on-the-job training, assessment and the appropriate wages for undertaking their activities. For the smart and skilled, providers are expected to participate in industry networks and partnerships. For the apprentices, provide work that is relevant and appropriate to the vocation. And going back to that training plan, once again, that's the nexus between the employer, the RTO, and the apprentice. And as I mentioned before, smart and skilled providers must develop and implement a continuous professional development policy. And the word there is implement, so not just have it developed, but implement. And once again, you know, industry's involved quite strongly in these quality principles. We have a memorandum of understanding with ASQA. We don't pretend to be a quasi-ASQA, but we certainly have strong feelings around, from a regulatory point of view, around ensuring that everybody's out there doing the very best they can. So, in closing, I'd like to refer to a passage from Colin Powell's book titled "It Worked for Me in Life and Leadership." More than likely, many of us know about Colin Powell. He was the first African American to serve as a United States Secretary of State. He was the first African American chairperson of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and most notably a USA 4-star general. And he related in his book, titles at best advertise some authority, an official status conferring the ability to give orders and induce obedience. But titles mean little in terms of real power, which is the capacity to influence and inspire. Have you ever noticed that people will personally commit to certain individuals who on paper or on the organisational chart possesses little authority, but instead possess pizzazz, drive, expertise and genuine caring for teammates and products? On the flip side, non-leaders in management may be formally anointed with all the perks and frills associated with high positions, but they have little influence on others apart from their ability to extract minimal compliance to minimal standards, end quote. In the context of this presentation, the moral of this story is that we have a New South Wales State Training Authority, and that official status means we have an obligation to ensure that legislative and regulatory requirements are observed. However, the challenge for Andrew's team and for all of us in State Training Authority is to continue to work with you, each one of you, and our other stakeholders to influence and inspire those quality outcomes to the benefit of our interested parties, including registered training organisations, students, and you, our industry partners. Thank you.
Leonie, I have a question. I've just noticed on the New South Wales Apprenticeship Traineeship Plan on page 1, obligations and undertakings, registered training organisations. I'm satisfied that the nominated workplace has the necessary work, resources, facilities and experienced people needed for the apprenticeship trainee to successfully undertake the on-the-job component of the apprenticeship traineeship described in this plan. That's a bit of a change. But the RTO is going to actually check that out. What's the legal status of the training plan? Because they all sign it under here.
That's correct. Under Andrew, yeah.
So it is required that a training plan be developed and submitted with a training contract. We are requiring. We've sort of relaxed that requirement a little bit, and we asked RTOs to engage in the first instance by providing a training plan proposal, which locks in that relationship between the employer and the RTO and the student. But under our current training plan guidelines, which are embedded into the contract that the department has with a particular RTO, the RTO is required to develop a full training plan within 12 weeks of approving the training contract. So it's not a matter of staying behind the desk and trying to guess what the activities or the nature of the employer's business might be when developing the training plan. It's expected that they will fully engage with the employer and they will develop a training plan that is customised to the activities of the apprentice in the workplace. And we've asked them to make that acknowledgement, to give that undertaking. And it is a requirement under the APL or under the contract, that they have with the department, that they comply with those requirements.